Hello. What I wanted to talk about was this idea of where where does the law come from originally, and tie that in with um, this idea of feeling peaceful within, feeling ourselves, feeling authentic. Back in 2008, when I suppose kind of started a spiritual path, one of the questions that I had, or one of the things I was sitting with a lot, was um, how to be peaceful within. I just wanted peace. I wanted to feel inner peace. And at that point, I thought I'd have to give up my legal career because I just did not think the two things were possible. I'm not necessarily saying that they are possible now, although I do think they can be, and should be. Um, um, but I certainly, it's not that I have achieved that yet or know the secret to it, but it's important, I think, that we explore, these questions. So, yeah, just considering where law comes from, you know, it starts out really with our thinking. Whenever a law is developed, it's from somebody's thinking, somebody's thought that this particular law is needed. And some laws hopefully will be, have good meaning behind them and well meaning, and it will be in relation to protecting people, or providing some kind of support to society. Other laws maybe wouldn't have such positive meaning behind them, Um, perhaps they're more practical, or perhaps some laws even are unjust from the start. However, they all start with the thinking and mental structures, and then they actually come into form, into written form. And once the law is in place, then we tend to form, long pieces of legislation within those rules, regulations, all these kind of addendums. And then, of course, there's case law as the legislation starts to be challenged in different ways. And so much so many words, and thoughts form around this original law, and so much structure, if you will, forms around it from what was originally a thought, somebody's thought, and hopefully somebody's well meaning thought. And so, eventually you have this kind of large framework or network or web of words and writing and thoughts around this law. And what happens is we then get really bogged down in that because it's heavy, and our minds are trying to understand it, and we get distracted by it, we get absorbed by it. Those in the legal profession, those working within the law, we're told that this is what we have to learn. We become totally absorbed in the words, in the laws, legislations, rules, regulations, case law, guidance, notes, advices. It's all this kind of written form, structure. Um, and it's heavy. Um, and so inevitably, and so yeah, a good word for this is red tape too. Red tape. It's just this entangled kind of labyrinth of um, stuff that you have to navigate. And um, so the question is, how do we how do we how do we maintain access um, to the original spirit or intention that was there in the very beginning. And that's assuming that this particular law is well-meaning and had a positive intention. I think for other laws where the original intention actually was not so just, or then that's another question. Then the question would be, well, what really feels true, I suppose, and that would be the way to eventually extract any unjust laws. But it's just this inquiry about how do we, as people working within the legal profession, how do we avoid getting totally bogged down in the form, the structure, the words, and retain access and the connection to the original spirit, the indwelling spirit of what was created. And useful words are justice, truth, um, fairness, even love, connection. And so I just wanted to suggest, as a practical inquiry for practice, if we are practicing and meeting a client and assisting in some legal matter, a useful thing can be when the person comes to you and they have an issue with the law, whatever that might be, notice when that issue comes before you first. Does your mind immediately start racing and trying to figure out what is the law that applies to that, do what rule regulation 3.5, whatever it is that starting to happen in your head? What emotions are happening? Do you starting to feel a little bit stressed, a little bit tense, in your stomach, maybe around your chest? This feeling like, oh, I have to figure this out now. I have to find what rules apply. What's happening in your body. Notice the sensations, and just it can be useful in that moment to pause and notice that that is happening, and then ask yourself, am I really getting caught up immediately? Not to say that it's not necessary at some point, of course, to look at the actual law that's in place right now, but am I being drawn there immediately? Am I being distracted and absorbed immediately into the form and the structure, rather than giving space initially to the lived inquiry of the person in front of me, really feeling what it is that's being asked, and also maybe just allowing this the spirit of justice, or spirit of truth, or the spirit of um, fairness to be here, and sensing maybe what might be there as a result of that, because surely that is the spirit with which any just law was originally created with. Therefore, you can access that same quality of being now without having to go into all the detailed, intricate structures that were created after that. And of course, you can go and refer to the actual law later, but it feels like it would be so valuable just to allow a bit of space. And I'm not saying many good lawyers, I think, do this naturally already without maybe being even consciously kind of aware of it. But it is actually useful to really think about it and why we would do that, Um, yeah, and I think that is also the way that a really fresh um, approach and truly useful solution might arrive for the client, just regardless of whatever the particular legal issue is. So I hope that was somewhat helpful. Thank you for listening.